Hello, Mark Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here. In this tip, I want to show you how to go about creating large print editions of any music that you might want to be printing so that it can be more readable by people with visual impairments. So right here I have a minuet by Bach that we've actually been looking at in the Braille study group, but if you want to produce a version for someone with low vision who just needs the music to be larger in order to see it, let's first take a look at one of the ways that this can be done, what the results will look like, and then I'll show you how to go about it. So this is what it looks like to start with. You can see it's just a standard looking piece of sheet music here, and what I have now done is created this much larger version. And this isn't just because I've zoomed in, this is actually much larger. If I zoom out, you can see I've actually made it horizontal format or landscape format, and you can see there's only 2 systems per page. That is because these systems, the staves themselves, are much larger. This particular type of format is sometimes referred to as modified stave notation. That's a term in use especially in the UK, and it's a system in which we don't just make everything larger, but we make some adjustments along the way. And I've gone ahead and done that here. And so first, I've provided you my custom version of this. I've have a template file attached to this as well as a style file. And so if you go to Format, Load Style, you'll be able to load this style into your own score and have this right away. Also, when you create a score, you'll be able to, if you save this my template to your templates folder, you'll be able to create a new score using that template. But you'll probably want to customize some of the things that I've done here. So I want to show you a little bit about what those things involve. First, if I go to Format, Page Settings, I've made the staff space 3¼ millimeters. This is almost twice as big as the standard staff size of 1.75 millimeters. If I actually went as big as twice as big, it couldn't quite fit 2 systems onto that first page, and I wanted it to, but really you go whatever size is going to work. So that is how I chose that size, a little arbitrarily. But then also there's some other modifications. One of the principles in modified stave notation is we want to make everything bigger, but not necessarily everything in sync. We're going to want some things bigger still, and maybe some things not quite as big relative to other things. So this is all things that MuseScore gives you control over. So notice I've made this landscape format, as I think I mentioned, so that I can fit more measures on a system than I could if it was portrait format, and that means you have to scan across the page a little less often, so that can be useful. Also, if I go to Format Style, we're going to see all sorts of settings that I have customized here. So, for instance, if I go to the Measure section here, you can see I've reduced the spacing ratio and the minimum note distance from the default. The idea is, although we're making everything bigger, we don't actually need that much more space between notes. That ends up being kind of wasted. So by reducing the spacing ratio and the minimum note distance, we can get a little bit more onto the page, which is going to be useful because when you're making things larger, it's going to take more pages, and no one likes a lot of page turns, right? So there's other adjustments that I've made. For instance, on the Notes tab of this page, I've made the dot size larger than the default. So everything scales, but the dots are going to be still maybe a little too small to see, even though they're larger because I made everything larger. So here I'm making dots larger relative to the notes than they otherwise would be. I've set it to 130%. So that's something that often people might find useful. I did a similar adjustment under the articulations section here. I've also set the articulation size to be 130%, so that's staccato markings and so forth. are also a little bit larger than they otherwise would have been. There's a whole lot of changes I made under text styles, but basically it's just one change over and over again. I've changed to a sans serif font. I mean, I can't really pronounce that correctly. Sans, right? Free Sans is the is a free font that comes with MuseScore, so it's available on all systems that MuseScore runs on. So that is the one I've chosen, and I basically set everything here, every type of text, to that font and made it bold. Now that might not be necessary for everyone, and so you can customize that further. And by the way, no, I did not do this by individually going to every single thing in here and then selecting that font in the dropdown. I did it by saving my style, going to the Format Style dialog as I format and then save style here. I saved the file, and then I just loaded that file into a text editor and just did a global search and replace, changing Edwin into Free Sans. So going back to the dialog, I also just wanted to point out that under text styles, I also made sure all of these text styles have this box checked to say follow staff size. Normally when you make the staff size bigger, most text gets bigger with it, but some things don't, kind of by design, because in some cases you don't want them to, but I think for our purposes here, we do want them to. So I made sure that checkbox to follow the staff size was checked, because without that being checked for the title, then the title would look kind of small relative to everything else. So I went ahead and made sure everything had its checkbox for the follow staff size. So those were some of the things that I did here, and then you can play with these things further as you learn a little bit more about the unique requirements of your own vision or whoever you might be printing this for. So that's how you can go about creating this modified stave notation.